What's your take on what we heard tonight and what we've seen over the last 7 days? Evening.
Well, listening to that intro you had there, I mean, multiple things can be true at the same time. So one of the things that's actually really interesting about what happened today is that actually he's applying tariff on the world. Excluding Canada and Mexico, they still have sort of their own deal. And
And China.
excluding
Yep.
Canada, I mean, excluding China,
Yep.
which has its own like way higher tariffs. You said 125%. So it is actually pretty wild when you consider the fact that markets were celebrating today when the world that we ended up with is still a world with much higher tariffs. So if you wanted to make the case for him having some sort of grand plan, I mean that is actually pretty wild that those stocks are still lower than they were on election day. But I mean, from covering this up close, it doesn't really seem like they're playing 4D chess here. It seems like they're sort of taking this as it comes, and it definitely seems that at least a significant piece of why President Trump did today what he did is because of the U.S. bond market,
Yes.
where actually we started to see a huge sell-off, and that's pretty interesting because he seemed pretty unsympathetic to the sell-off in stocks. And so one of the things that I think we learned today is that he is at least worried about the bond market.
Well, any leader has to be, doesn't it? And yet it was eminently foreseeable, was it not, Victoria, that what he announced last Wednesday would have this effect? Do you think they were somehow taken by surprise by the carnage that ensued? Because they shouldn't have been, should they?
So it's kind of hard to tell specifically what they were expecting. Certainly, they expected some kind of market reaction. But I think the concern with the bond market reaction was that you had a huge run up in yields, right? Like it was sort of the equivalent of if the Federal Reserve had hiked interest rates in basically overnight. And so that, you can see stocks lose money, and that is painful for people. But when you start getting into debt markets, it can get a little dicey because you can start to get to concerning market disruptions that then feed out into broader crises. And so definitely it seemed like maybe they were concerned that it was heading in that direction.
If I were to say that this is a man who likes to project strength from every pore of his being, Victoria, and who after today's announcement is oozing weakness from every pore of his being and humiliation and frantic backpedaling, would that be unfair?
I mean, it's kind of hard to say because it's part of his whole deal that he's completely unpredictable and
But
completely
this is not an
chaotic.
abject humiliation. How can it not be when he's frantically reversing something he announced only a week ago?
I mean, it definitely reinforces the idea that when he says something is the policy, that it's not guaranteed to be the policy, and that it may change depending on what pressures he receives, which is also an indication, I mean, maybe to your point, that he's not just uninterested in what everyone else thinks and it's just going to do what he's going to do. There are still pressures that get to him.
And those pressures are the bond markets particularly. I wonder how big a role some of the very, very wealthy people around Trump who have played a big role in getting him elected might have had in this reversal. People who personally would have lost potentially up to billions of dollars because of these economic policies. We know, don't we? There's been this almighty row between some of his own advisors, Elon Musk calling one of them a moron, and so on. Do you think that might have played a role too?
Yeah, so as we started to see stocks really sell off starting last week, on Sunday, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent flew to Florida to basically tell Trump, look, you don't have to back off your policy, but you do need to make clear to people that you're willing to negotiate, right? That there's wiggle room on what happens with these tariffs. Otherwise, markets are going to keep going down. And so we started to see a shift in messaging uh, over the weekend that basically where they started to indicate, okay, maybe these aren't necessarily permanent. Maybe they're negotiable. So clearly there was some impact there. And then Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick also tweeted today that he and Scott Bessent were there when President Trump was drafting his post on Truth Social, which is how the news was disseminated to the world. And so it definitely seems like his economic advisors were involved. But Trump too apparently was watching the bond market. He's told reporters that he was watching it and that the bond market is tricky, but that it's beautiful now.